First team reps be damned. Shedeur Sanders shined in his NFL debut Friday night and gave the Browns something to think about in their quarterback competition. We'll talk about it coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Dog Pound? I'm Spencer German, your host of the Locked On Browns podcast. I'm proudly covering your Cleveland Browns each and every single day in the land and on the road. Shedeur Sanders did exactly what I expected him to do in Friday night's preseason game. We'll obviously react to it, what it means for where he stands in the Browns quarterback competition, plus some other observations from Friday's preseason win over the Panthers. First, though, I do want to thank you for being an everydayer at the Locked On Browns podcast, making us your first listen every single day. Remember, you can find Cleveland Browns content with Locked On Browns every week, Monday through Friday, guaranteed, with bonus content on some weekends as well, and it's totally free to you. Just make sure you hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you get your podcasts, and of course at the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. You can also get involved in the show by sharing your thoughts on anything we discussed today in the comment section. This is your team, so be part of the conversation every single day. Shedeur Sanders, if you don't know by now, it's the talk of the internet. It's the talk of football. Absolutely shined. He balled out, in my estimation, in the Browns preseason opener against the Carolina Panthers. Amidst all the talk about whether or not he was being set up for failure and all those different types of conversations, it didn't matter when it was all said and done. Sanders finished after playing 10 series in the game, 14-23, 138 yards, 2 touchdowns, which were really brilliant throws in general, a 106.8 quarterback rating. He took just under 50 snaps in the game. It was a really, really good showing, a really, really solid showing from Sanders, who, despite what everyone else was saying about it, and what I'm saying about it right here, downplayed the entire thing, both on the TV broadcast when he was talking to Aditi Kikabwala, and also when he was at his post-game press conference with the media, asked about how he felt about it and basically downplayed the whole thing and made it seem like he stunk up the joint, which is just utterly ridiculous because he was awesome. And listen, was it perfect? No. But I don't think anybody expected Shedeur Sanders to give you like a perfect performance in his preseason debut, the first NFL action he's going to see. So it wasn't necessarily some indictment on him that there were some things that clearly didn't go great every step of the way. And he alluded to some of those things. He flat out said to Aditi Kikabwala, who asked him, what's your message to your dad, who's been pretty vocal on social media, clearly watching your performance tonight, clearly watching you. And he said he was sorry because he didn't feel like he did what he needed to do tonight. That was his exact quote. And he talked about how there were some missed opportunities on top of some things that he thought he did well, some good with some bad. And that's kind of what you'd anticipate from any rookie starting in a preseason game or otherwise, that there'd be some good and some bad. But I think, like, resoundingly to me, there was more good than bad for Shedeur Sanders in this performance. And I think it starts with the obvious, which is the 2 touchdown throws he made. The first one coming down in the red zone, and you find Caden Davis on, a crosser levels concept going to his left into the boundary. And what was brilliant about the throw was just like the layeredness to it, where you first of all, and maybe, you know what, let me backtrack for a second, because this is actually where the conversation needs to start, is with all the national people who were bringing up, they're setting him up for failure, they haven't given him first team reps. None of that mattered. None of it. And this is exactly what I thought was going to happen, was as much as people spent time talking about that, as much as people spent time trying to say that the Browns were doing him wrong, I didn't think who he had reps with during training camp was going to matter once he got the opportunity. And that's all he asked for. And anybody who is a staunch Shedeur Sanders supporter, some of you have been saying this for several weeks now, is like, doesn't matter, he's just going to go out and ball and make the most of it. And if you were somebody who's a Shedeur Sanders supporter who didn't believe that, then I question how much you're really a Shedeur Sanders supporter, because I said it, like, the kid's a gamer. When the lights are on, when he's in between those lines, when he's on the field, he just brings it. And that's something you can't always account for in a training camp practice. That's something you can't always account for in your evaluation of a you can kind of account for it in your evaluation of a guy, but you don't know what it's going to look like until they take the field and they get a chance to play. And I thought we saw that tonight. Was when he was out there, he looked good. He was in command of the offense. Things went smoothly. There were some pre-snap penalties, not necessarily something of that was his fault, obviously, but some things to iron out there, which was a problem for the Browns last year as well. So you keep moving, and they hope to clear those things up before the season starts. But like by and large, I thought the process of things was great. His ability to read and make the throws, the questions that anybody had about him as a player when it comes to his ability to navigate the pocket, I think he showed some poise in answering those things. There were still some moments, like there was a play where he turned his back on the defense, and as they were kind of rushing him and had to throw the ball away, and that's just a big no-no. There was a time where he took a sack that he probably shouldn't. There was a few times where it felt like he probably held the ball a little too long. But by and large, he navigated the pocket, felt pressure. He did that, by the way, on the second touchdown pass he threw to Caden Davis, where some pressure kind of came off the left side. Also, Amani Marshall had a tremendous blitz pickup block to buy Shedeur a little bit more time, and then he just sort of stood in the pocket, stepped up, delivered a great ball over the middle to Caden Davis for the second touchdown pass he threw. And that first touchdown pass, as I was alluding to, was a levels concept going to his left and just a brilliant ball to float it in the perfect spot over sort of bracketed coverage, a guy in the playing up above Caden Davis, and he put it in a perfect spot where that guy couldn't make a play on it, and Davis came down with it, got the 2 feet in, and it was a great touchdown pass. There was a couple throws, one over the middle later in the game to, I think it was on a third down, to Gage Larvadain, that like not a lot of rookies are making that throw. If you were hoping, like Shedeur Sanders to me checked all the boxes that you wanted him to check. Is there still things he needs to improve on? Yes, but he checked the boxes. By and large, the Browns have been hoping he would be able to check in that they weren't sure he was going to be able to check, if you will, as they sort of had him lower in this quarterback competition. And I think that's the most encouraging thing of all this is like he got better. He shows you that there's that he can play on this stage and be a good NFL player at the very least, with some room to grow. And he's going to get that time to grow and develop and continue to play well, because the Browns are being very patient with him in general. But man, was he awesome. Man, was he awesome. And I expected it. I did. I expected him to do exactly what he did on Friday night and give people something to talk about, give something for people to debate, because I knew it wasn't going to matter what reps he got at practice. He made the most of the opportunity, in my estimation, even though he felt differently about it. And I do think he's now set the stage for the Browns to have something to really, really think about in general when it comes to how they're going to handle this thing moving forward. Like we'll talk about that here in a second, a little bit in just a second. But I think if you're a Shedeur Sanders fan, you walk away excited and happy with what he put out there. And the fact that he continues to just go about everything the right way on and off the field, his attitude, the fact that to him he felt disappointed in the performance and felt like he didn't do enough and didn't take advantage. Like that's been his mindset since he got in the building back in April, and it hasn't wavered even an iota. Like he has constantly just reiterated that like he's focused on football. He wants to be great. People who thought this was like the Johnny Manziel thing all over again and just a bunch of fanfare and bluster. No, this is who he is. He has a deep desire to be great at this sport, at this level, and he is working every day to try to make that happen. So much so that like he probably couldn't see the forest of the trees on how great his performance I thought was on Friday night, and And again, for those who thought they were going to set him up for failure, I actually think they set him up for great success. Kevin Stefanski called a really good game plan for him, made sure he was doing stuff he was comfortable with. And then once he opened things up and allowed him to do a little bit more and push the ball downfield a little bit and make some tougher throws, he made them, which is exactly what you would want to see and exactly what you would have hoped Shedeur Sanders would do in those moments. And so at the very least, the Browns need to take the training wheels off. And we'll talk about that some more coming up on the Locked On Browns podcast. Ever wish managing your money just felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning for a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. My wife and I were trying to get some bigger projects done around the house this summer. Plus, we wanted to take a couple trips, and we needed to get a better look into our financial picture, where we could save some money to do the things that we wanted to do. Monarch Money has made managing our money together as a couple smoother than ever before. Take control of your finances with monarchmoney.com, or take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. This episode is brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of year. NFL kickoff is just around the corner, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. My most competitive league is a Yahoo Fantasy Football League. It's the most fun I have playing fantasy, and my friends and I are enjoying playing fantasy at Yahoo. You should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout the month of August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring teams get eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, though, you can still play a head-to-head private league or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. So given how Shedeur performed on Friday night in a preseason setting, I think the next natural question, or the next thing people want to know is how it's going to impact, if at all, the quarterback competition in general. And I'll start by saying this. I don't know if what Shedeur did on Friday is going to drastically change the Browns' current, if you will, depth chart at this position. Like, I don't know if this means all of a sudden we're going to show up to practice on Monday and he's going to be, the number 2 guy, or that he's going to be the number 3 guy, even supplanting Dillon Gabriel. I don't know that that's going to be the case. This team has shown for a longer stretch of time that they believe Dillon Gabriel is maybe more developed in his process, that he's ready for a little bit more at the NFL level. Part of that is probably, I would assume is because is baked in the fact that he played in college for so long, has a little bit more experience. He's seen some things. And they listen, as I've said a number of times, loved him during the pre-draft process, largely for the intangibles that he brings to the table. And there's been some bad days in there, man. We've talked about it here on the show. Like, it hasn't been pretty some days for Dillon Gabriel, but they still believe that he is going to be something for them at the NFL level, and they want to see that thing through. So I don't know that all of a sudden they're just going to change course completely and now Shedeur is going to supplant Dillon Gabriel. I also do think they want to be patient, or remain patient, with Shedeur Sanders and not put him out there too soon, which, as I've talked about in other instances, if the worst thing you can say that they're doing to Shedeur Sanders is being patient, that's actually a good thing. And it's not a sign that they're setting him up for failure just in general, because they have set a lot of other quarterbacks up for failure by putting them out there too soon. And with Shedeur, it's clear that they're trying to make sure he has the tools to be successful, can do the things that they ask him to do, at this level and get acclimated before they put him out there into an NFL game where the bullets are flying and he's got to know sort of how to handle himself. And I think that in that regard, like, patience is okay. So, because you don't want to screw up another quarterback, this organization's done to that too many damn times. So I think that that can all sort of be true. And I do think that if he were to rise up the depth chart, I wouldn't be surprised. But I also think like they're sort of set in their thought process right now in terms of what the depth chart looks like at this juncture, and I think they're going to want to see some more from Shedeur before they potentially have him rise any higher. Now, right now, I think just by nature of this group, the injuries to Kenny Pickett and Dylan Gabriel have afforded him even more opportunities, and so if he continues to make the most of those, I think that could certainly change. I've said a couple times now that this week is sort of the pivotal week for this competition in general. You got the 2 joint practices with the Eagles. You have the second preseason game, which will largely be about, again, somebody like Shedeur Sanders playing a ton of minutes and a ton of snaps because the starters are going to get a lot of the reps against the first team in those 2 joint practices on Wednesday and Thursday. And I do think that the Browns are going to give you or they're going to have a clearer picture, and it's going to be pretty obvious who their starting quarterback is by the end of this week, leading into the 3rd preseason game. Because at that point, it's about, okay, can we get this guy ready for the season? And so I still think Joe Flacco is going to be your starter. I don't think that's changing. But the big thing that I think should change from here, after what Shedeur Sanders just showed you what he can do, after I think he proved, how far along he is in his process, and that he, can play at this level, and he's even improved upon some of the things that were probably concerns for him coming into the NFL, I think is get him those first team reps finally. He is absolutely positively, and I thought he earned them already, but he has without question earned reps with the first team. Give him a chance to at least play with the same group that you're evaluating the other quarterbacks off of playing with. Give him a chance to see what he can do in a setting that involves him with the ones and the best receivers and the best offensive line against the best defense that the Browns currently have on the roster. At the very least, I think he has earned that. At the very least, I think he has earned the training wheels coming off a little bit more here, and the Browns putting some more on his plate, like they've done with Dylan Gabriel. I don't think that's too much to ask by any stretch. Whether it means he's the starting quarterback week 1 or not, I think it probably still is a long shot that he would be the guy who starts for this team week 1. Again, patience can be an okay thing. It doesn't have to mean that he's, that they're not putting him in the right spots or whatever. Like they don't want to put somebody out there too soon, and I can respect that. Even if I think he's the most talented quarterback on the roster, I can respect where they're coming out with that, where they just want to, be careful here. But again, at the very least, those first team reps that we keep talking about, and the fact that he hasn't had any with the first team, it's about time he gets some. It's about time that they start giving him the same type of stuff, the same type of plays that they've given Dylan Gabriel to this point, and see how he handles it. Because I think if nothing else comes away from Friday, he showed that he is ready for more. He showed that he can handle whatever they're going to throw at him, that he's capable of making the throws, that he's capable of running a functioning NFL offense in an effective and poised way. I mean, that's the other thing too, is like, we talk so much about the 2 touchdown throws, and we talk so much about like him largely showing that he has improved some of his mechanics. His footwork has gotten better and can still improve. The drifting into pressure wasn't much of an issue. I thought he navigated the pocket beautifully. Like we point to those things, but it was also just like the poise he ran the offense with, and the fact that he was able to march up and down the field 3 different times, yes, against different units, and his early on, it took some feeling out against most of the pretty much the entire Panthers first team before he started getting things going. Once they sort of were down to about 3 or 4 starters being out there on defense in that early second quarter, where he finally let his first touchdown drive. Like, it took some getting used to, it took some feeling things out, but once he got rolling, it was like a stone downhill. He was just locked in. He looked poised. He was ready to go. And he ran the offense beautifully on top of Kevin Stefanski, putting him in positions to be successful. So listen, I understand that they view these quarterbacks a certain way, and that they, don't want to put anybody in a situation that's going to deter them or hurt them or not be advantageous to them having success. As much as people think the Browns are trying to sabotage his career, I don't think that's the case in the least. I think they want him to be successful, and I think they're trying to, just take their time and not do too much at once with Shedeur. But I think Friday night showed you he is ready for more, and I think Friday night should be enough to finally earn those first team reps that we've been talking about. However that comes, whatever that looks like. Maybe it's Monday, maybe it's at the joint practices. And here's the other interesting thing. There's some sort of questions here about what the quarterback rotation in general is going to look like this week, because from those who are down in Carolina, my colleagues who I talk to and I follow along with when I'm not there, because obviously I didn't make the trip to Carolina this time. It sounds like it sounds like Kenny Pickett had taken steps towards maybe returning next week, but on the broadcast, Browns Hall of Famer Joe Thomas on the television broadcast flat out said that he basically insinuated that Kenny Pickett could miss another couple weeks before he's back out on the field, which to me would kind of be a red flag that he's the odd man out at this point, and there's not really much you can do about it if he's hurt. So I found that interesting. We'll see what it actually means and where he actually sort of stands when we get to practice on Monday. But that's an interesting development that just naturally could mean Shedeur Sanders finds himself higher on the step chart, because Kenny Pickett might not even really be a factor in this thing, even for these Eagles joint practices that are going to be such an important evaluation tool. And so maybe that does finally open him up for those first team reps and to do a little bit more and to continue to make a name for himself in this preseason, which I think he's done a great job of. And it cannot be ignored by the Browns at this point. Time to take the training wheels off for Shedeur Sanders. I know we've talked a lot about Shedeur, rightfully so. He was the talk of the town. He was the talk of this game. But there were some other things that I noticed or that stood out about the game on Friday. We'll talk about those coming up next on the Locked On Browns podcast. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings the bold grape, ginger, and lime flavor of your favorite golf drink minus the alcohol into a quick, energizing shot. Whether you're sinking birdies or just making memories with friends, this one's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Let's be honest, some days on the course or even off of it, you just need an energy boost to stay sharp and energized. All my favorite memories of playing golf came with my dad as part of a Father's Day tradition we started many years ago, where we play around on Father's Day or around Father's Day. I hit some of the best shots of my life, played some of the best rounds of my life against my dad, and I just wonder if I had won a few more times against him, had I been drinking 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. If you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that's the number 5hourenergy.com. You can use my promo code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive $20 or 20% off, your first order. This offer is only valid until September 30th on one order. It cannot be used with other promotions. The code is also not good on subscription orders. Whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into 36, get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion-flavored 5-Hour Energy shots today. All right, so the talk of the main point, the main talking point from Friday night's preseason win against the Panthers is Shedeur Sanders, rightfully so, and it will continue to be Shedeur Sanders through the weekend up until Monday morning, so on and so forth, because he was great. He played really well, and I do think this, as I talked about, opens him up for even more to be brought to his plate and for him to continue to just grow into the role that he's trying to carve out for himself, which at some point is hopefully the starter. I just don't know if he climbs the depth chart immensely that quickly, but I think there's a lot for the Browns to like in terms of saying, okay, he's ready for more. Now, that said, that doesn't mean there weren't other things that happened on Friday, weren't other things to observe, and I want to touch on some of those things here, at least for a few minutes, because, listen, the other big thing that this was about was the rest of Shedeur's rookie class, right? Like the rest of this rookie class, what did those guys look like? What did they bring to the table? How did they play or seem or feel or look in a game setting, in their first game setting, the same way we were looking at that for Shedeur Sanders, of course. And I would say that by and large, the rookies stood out and made a lot of plays. And most of them that we sort of got a chance to really see more of, looked like they can hold their own in these types of in a game, and made some nice plays. I want to start though with the two guys who I think made the two rookies who I think stood out maybe most of all, aside from Shedeur, and that was on the defensive side of the ball. Both Mason Graham and Carson Schlesinger were just they were awesome. Now, like, I don't know that for Mason necessarily it showed up like in the stat sheet that he was dominating, because he ended up just finishing with the one combined tackle and that was it. But here's the thing. Without Myles Garrett out there, without some of his fellow defensive line mates that we've talked at length about that being the strongest unit on this team, he was the guy that the Panthers were constantly, especially when the ones were out there, trying to double and make life hard for, because they felt like he was the biggest threat up front. And while they were doing that, by the way, he was still causing problems. He was still pushing two guys back into the backfield. He was still getting in on tackles or trying to get in on tackles. He was still making life hard for Bryce Young and Andy Dalton and some of the quarterbacks that played under center at any given time. He was solid. And I think he was so solid early on that I saw people on social media even saying, like, I've seen enough from Carson Schlesinger. I don't need to see any more. Put him in bubble wrap. I'm good. So I thought there were some positive signs for him in terms of what he's going to bring to the table as the number 5 overall pick. I also thought that Carson Schlesinger, every time we've talked about Carson, it's been like, okay, rookie minicamp. He looked good, but no pads, lot to still sort of see. Pads come on, great. He's flying around making plays. Now can he translate it to the field? And boy, did he ever. He was flying around. He was making the plays the same way he does at practice. He was taking command of the huddle as the green dot, making sure guys were in the right place. You picked up on that through the broadcast. He had 6 combined tackles. Would not be denied making plays. And I think he in coverage. I know he was in coverage and made some nice plays. He was running with Ted McMillan at one point on a play. So I think those two guys especially stood out. And as we get excited about this defense in general and what they bring to the table and them returning to dominance this season, those two guys being at the forefront of that, being a major part of that is so notable. And like seeing them in this setting run around, I can't wait to see them do it in an actual meaningful game as well. And so, yeah, like they just continue to sort of check the boxes themselves. We'll see how much they play, if at all, in next week's preseason game. I'm guessing they're going to continue to sort of give the rookies some time and give them some reps to sort of prepare them for the season. But both those guys will certainly be playing a lot against the Eagles. But positive signs for the defensive side of the ball with the two rookies that are part of that group. On the offensive side, rookie-wise, we didn't really get to see much from Harold Fannin Jr., so still sort of let's see what he does next time sort of situation there. But Dylan Sampson made a couple plays. He got 2 carries, had just the 6 yards. He also caught one pass, although he didn't gain any yards. So still some more to probably see from him in the grand scheme of things. But I'll tell you what, 2 guys that really stood out, that have stood out all camp, continue to be Luke Floria and Gage Larvadain, who I've joked already are sort of the 2 guys that I think are basically jockeying for that last wide receiver spot on this roster, potentially that number 6 spot if they keep 6. And they both had great games. Luke Floria had the awesome one-handed catch on the throw from Shedeur, which was a really nice throw. Gage Larvadain had a couple receptions in his own right as well. And one of them was one of the best throws I think Shedeur made of the entire night, sort of an over the middle throw. I think he was running like a dig and he found him. It was an advanced level throw from Shedeur, and those two continue to have a great connection. And that's on top of the fact that Larvadain has also done some nice things in the return game. And I think you saw that last night. 2 returns for 38 yards in the punt game. That's what you want to see. For a guy who's like a low end of the roster guy trying to fight for a roster spot, if he can be involved in special teams like that, he's absolutely going to be in line for some opportunities. Now, both of those guys left the game with injuries, looked like sort of lower leg muscle strain type things. I did see that Luke Floria told reporters that he's going to be okay and that he just needs to stretch more before the game. So we'll see, and during the game to stay hydrated. Larvadain, I did not see an update yet, so we'll see what that looks like. But those two guys continue to shine, and one of them is making the roster. It's just a matter of who, and we'll see what all that looks like. And going back to the defense one more time, Mason Graham's role in it. Like, I think you saw beyond Mason that this defensive line group is deep. Julian Okwara had 2 sacks on the night. Like, it's going to be some tough decisions to sort of sort that group out when it's all said and done and figure out who belongs and who doesn't on the 53-man roster. And I don't envy Jim Schwartz and company for having to make those decisions, because that group is pretty, in my estimation, pretty deep. And it's why I think it's the sort of the heart and soul of that defensive group, and maybe even of the team being their strongest position group in general, that entire defensive front. So just a few other things I noticed, but we know the star of the show, of course, was Shedeur Sanders, and we'll be reacting to it all throughout the weekend and into next week. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. Make Locked On Browns your first listen every day. And for your second listen, check out Locked On Bets, where betting experts Lee Sterling and Kevin Rogers have daily MLB locks and can't miss football futures. Or you can keep it local. Check out Locked On Cavs or Locked On Guardians. As always, thanks for being an everydayer at the Locked On Podcast Network. I will talk to you again real soon, Cleveland. See ya.